The previous week we covered masa on a bandage, a splint, a cast, and we're going to skip through the chapters of Hayd, Nifas, and Istihada because it doesn't exactly pertain to us. And we'll go directly to ما يحرم بالجنابة or ما يحرم بسبب الجنابة, that which is unlawful in the state of janaba, in the state of major impurity. So the author writes ويحرم بالجنابة خمسة أشياء: الصلاة وقراءة آية من القرآن ومسها إلا بغلاف ودخول مسجد والطواف. So the author, he writes that what is prohibited in the state of major impurity are 5. So you have salat, because the requirement for salat, as stated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that one needs to be in the state of complete purity. And this is something that the Quran mentions in Surah An-Nisa, that إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ, and so on and so forth. And another verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ جُنُبًا فَاطَّهَّرُوا, that if you are in the state of major impurity, فَاطَّهَّرُوا, then seek purity, seek cleanliness. So the first thing that janaba, it prohibits, is the salat. So one is not permitted to offer salat in the state of major impurity. So one needs to take a bath, and only after taking a bath and washing the entire body, as well as gargling and putting water into the nostrils, would one be in a state where salat would be permissible. The second is وَقِرَاءَةُ آيَةٍ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ, to recite a verse from the Quran. This is forbidden. This is prohibited in the state of janaba. Because the Prophet ﷺ mentions that لَا يَمَسُّهُ إِلَّا الْمُطَهَّرُونَ, that one cannot touch the Quran except when a person is tahir, except when a person is completely clean. وَمَسُّهَا إِلَّا بِغِلَافٍ, even touching it. So recitation of the Quran, this is forbidden, this is prohibited, as well as touching the Quran too. This also is not permissible. This also is not permissible. And what is the proof of this? Some people nowadays, they think it's okay to touch the Quran without wudu, to touch the Quran without, or in the state where a person is in janaba. Things like this come out into our conversation pieces. So the proof of this is the hadith where Umar radiallahu anhu, when he came to his sister, and this was in Makkah, and she was being instructed by one of the companions. And as Umar radiallahu anhu came, he finds out that his sister and his brother-in-law had accepted Islam. He struck her, and he struck his brother-in-law as well. And then his sister remarked that, "Oh, you're only doing this because we are Muslim." And Umar radiallahu anhu, even prior to Islam, he was a decent person. He looked at what he did. He realized that whatever he did, this is not acceptable. This is wrong. And he softened when he saw that his sister was hurt. And he asked her that, you were reading something prior to my coming in. So what were you reading? So she said that, we were reciting the Quran. You can't touch it because you are an unclean polytheist. So she showed Umar radiallahu anhu how to perform the wudu. He performed the wudu. And this is the evidence that one is not allowed to touch the Quran except with complete purity. And that also includes وَمَسْوَ إِلَّا بِغِلَافٍ, that you can't touch it except if there is a covering on it. So if there's a covering and that covering is separate from the Quran, it has to be separate from the Quran. If it's stuck to the Quran, then the ruling is going to be different. If it's stuck to the Quran, ruling will be different. So for example, if it's like laminated or something, if it's laminated, it sticks to the Quran, so the ruling would be different. It would not be permissible to touch such a Quran. Because when you sell, let's say that you have a covering on the Quran. When you sell that Quran, you're not going to remove that covering. The covering is included with the Quran. So that becomes part of the Quran. Thus, it would not be permissible to touch a Quran that has that kind of covering. However, the covering that we use where the Quran is placed into some kind of envelope, or perhaps a part, that part, that thing that is made from cloth, right? Envelope made of cloth, that would be permissible. So it would be okay to touch the Quran without wudu, because when you sell that Quran, it doesn't come with that. It doesn't come with the cloth parcel or whatever. It's completely and entirely separate. So وَقِرَاءَةُ آيَةٍ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ, this is prohibited. وَمَسُّهَا إِلَّا بِغِلَافٍ, touching the Quran except with a ghilaf, except with a covering. It's forbidden. وَدُخُولُ مَسْجِدٍ, it is also not permissible and it is unlawful. It is not permissible, it is forbidden to enter the masjid in the state of janaba, in the state of major impurity. And also وَدُخُولُ مَسْجِدٍ, as well as with tawaf. Tawaf too, this is not permissible. Right? To make tawaf around the Kaaba, this too is not permissible in the state of major janaba. So all of these things, ma yahum bil janaba. So there are 5 things: salat, qira'atu ayatin min al-Quran, a recitation of even an ayah from the Quran, wa massuha illa bi ghilafin, touching the Quran except if there is a covering, and that covering is separate and independent from the Quran. Wa dukhulu masjidin, entering the masjid, that's number 4, and number 5 is tawaf. And ma yahrum al-muhdith, what is unlawful for the person who is in the state of minor impurity, it's only 3 things: salat, tawaf, wa masul Quran illa bi ghilafin, and touching the Quran except if there is a covering, which means that recitation of Quran is permissible if a person is in minor impurity where wudu is only required to remove oneself from that minor impurity. Obviously, if a person is in major impurity, then again, ghusl is required, ghusl is needed, and only then would salat be permissible, recitation of Quran is permissible, touching the Quran is permissible, entering the masjid is permissible, and tawaf is permissible. And we'll stop over here and continue next week. Any questions?
What about the piece of paper with the Quran?
That would be independent from the Quran, so it's fine. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What about reading the Quran with the intention of dhikr? Like, for example, when you write the how you say Subhanallah, sakhkhara lana hadha min kulli ma, or reading Ayatul Kursi before you go to sleep, or something.
Yeah, if it's for the purpose of dhikr, it would be okay. If it was for the purpose of dhikr. Otherwise, no, it would not be. The hukum would be the same as someone who is in the state of hayd, nifas. And only those ayat which are mentioned in hadith, specifically. I mean, that's according to the Hanafi madhab.
Yes.
It has to be mentioned in hadith. It can't be just like the entire Quran that I'm doing dhikr.
Right. Now, some people say, for example, they read Surah Al-Baqarah, but I think that's taking it out.
Yeah.
It's not right.
Yes. Is it the same in the Shafi's? Okay, it's the same.
And there is no water. You can do tayammum.
Yeah, tayammum would be a substitute. That's a substitute for water, and it can be used for major impurity. Or even, for example, if a person is unable to use water, and he's in the state of major impurity, yes, tayammum would be sufficient.
Then he can enter masjid.
Yeah, all of those things would be permissible, yeah.
And you said there was a hadith about the Umar radiallahu anhu.
Yes.
He said, how that can be a hadith?
Because it took place in the time of the Prophet ﷺ.
But not in his presence.
So anything that takes place, I mean, there's other evidences as well. This is a supporting evidence. So there's other evidences that would indicate that it would not be permissible for a person to touch the Quran except if that person is in the state of wudu. So this is you can say that this is a secondary evidence. There are primary evidences as well.
How about those non-Muslims that they work in the press and sometimes they change us for
I don't. Is that something
I'm
that?
just asking. I think there may be some, but I'm not sure.
No, it would not be. That would not be okay. That would
But
not be
all these
permissible.
Qur'ans are printed by
Yeah, that would not be
Muslims.
permissible.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that's permissible. Because, I mean, my understanding is that wherever they were printing presses for Quran, one of the requirements was that the people working there should always be in the state of wudu.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the Qurans that are printed in Saudi Arabia, all of the people working there, from what I've read and from what I know, they have to be in the state of wudu
Okay.
when they're binding the Quran and all of that.
My question was that there may be even non-Muslims, so if they are in the state of wudu,
No, that would,
that means they are all Muslims.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, non-Muslims being in the state of wudu, it doesn't really.
No.
Yeah.
Are there any non-Muslims that work in the print shops?
What kind of shop?
In this print shop, in the press,
Okay,
to print the Quran.
okay.
Are there any non-Muslims?
I don't think so. No.
So the
In some sense, no, I was talking in general about India. In India, there are many places that they print the Quran.
The Hindus?
Yeah, they could be Hindus.
I,
I mean, non-Muslims as employees or working.
yeah, I don't think that would be permissible. Yeah, because non-Muslims are not permitted to touch the Quran.
But how about when you gift a Quran to someone which is a version of English?
You're only allowed to gift the Quran to a person if there is ghalabatul dhann, if you know that this person, there's a possibility, a good possibility of him being guided. Otherwise, me gifting a Quran to Sam Harris, I mean, I know this guy's a khabis. I know he's a very wicked person. So he'll probably, burn the Quran or something. So that would not be permissible.
But how about some places where, like a bookstore, if they sell like Islamic books and Qurans? So, I mean, in that scenario?
Again, even in that scenario, I would not advise it. Yeah, I would not advise the Quran being given to, because it would disrespect the Quran. There's an entire chapter of taking Qurans to ila ard al-adu, taking it to enemy lands. There's hadith on that taking Quran to enemy lands, is it even permissible? Right? So again, there's prohibition. There's prohibition of taking Quran to enemy lands. What is the reasoning behind it? Because they're going to disrespect the Quran. So this is the reason. Unless there is like a reasonable, you have this reasonable speculation. Okay, if I give him the Quran, he's going to be guided. He will benefit from it by reciting the Quran. And that too, the person should be given, the Arabic as well as the English, not just the Arabic portion of it, the English as well. Only then would it be effective. Otherwise, it's not going to be effective. Like there was this, the story. What's that mathematician's name? His name escapes me right now. So he was an atheist. He started out as an atheist, and he was in California. I think he was doing his PhD, and some Arab brothers. He would go to their house. He would have food with them, and he had questions about atheism. They're like, "Look, we don't have the answers, but maybe you'll find your answer in this." And they gave him a Quran because he was asking, genuinely was asking. And he mentioned that, they were always good to me. So he goes, I never paid attention to the Quran because, why is there evil in the world? Right? Nobody could answer this question. So then one day I was bored and I decided, this Quran was sitting on my shelf. I picked up the Quran and I started reading. And right off the bat, I was just, I was completely focused on the Quran because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts, Alif Lam, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. that, oh, there's no doubt in this book. So he's like, what kind of book starts like this, that there's no doubt in it? Every single author that I've come across, they've always mentioned that, there's going to be mistakes and there's going to be errors. And this is a book where right off the bat, the author is saying, oh, there's no doubt. So he keeps on going. And then he comes across that, oh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that I'm going to create man. I'm going to create human beings. And the angels, they said that, why are you going to create something that is going to spread corruption? Because this is my question. This is exactly my question, that why is there corruption? And that's when he understood that corruption, this is not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. But Allah has given us a choice that we can either spread corruption or we can exercise our choice and do the right thing and live a life of nobility, live a life obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is when, he read through the entire Quran like this, the whole translation. And he accepted Islam just by reading through the Quran. So the point over here is that Arab brother, that family, they saw that, okay, this person is genuinely asking, genuinely interested in Islam because he sees us praying, does all of these things. So they gave him a Quran. So you can't just give a Quran to a random person thinking that, oh yeah, you know what, this person is going to be guided. There has to be some kind of reasonable dhann that, okay, there's a possibility he's going to accept if he reads the Quran. And there are people like that.
Okay. Is it not like, we are restricting people for trying to...
our job is not to walk around with a chip on our shoulder, giving everybody Quran. It's much better to give the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, which is a valid interpretation of the Quran. Because the seerah of Rasul, the Prophet ﷺ's seerah is the Quran. The way he lived, the way he conducted himself, this is Quran. It's better to give seerah book rather than the Quran.
I have a question about it.
Yes.
What about the student and the teachers? Especially those full-time study about Islamic, right? And then they do the Quran memorization, especially the girls and the sisters.
Yeah.
And then they investigate the...
Yeah. So in that kind of situation, they should wear thin gloves. They can wear thin gloves. That's an option. And then they break down the huruf. And in the Hanafi school, there seems to be some dispensation because they're not reading for qurba, to become close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're reading for tahfidh. So there's a difference between recitation for the purpose of qurba, right? Taqarrub ila Allah, becoming close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and recitation due to memorizing. So in the Hanafi school, this would be permissible for women. Otherwise, women who are becoming hufaz, it would be difficult for them to retain the Quran if they are unable to read for a number of days. Yeah.
So there is
some dispensation there, yeah.
What about enter the masjid?
For the Hanafi school, it's not permissible.
For simple?
Yes, same. Yeah, it would not be permissible. Yeah. For the Hanafi school, no. There is some dispensation in the Shafi'i. It's like karaha, so it's not